VikesNow, I am Dustin Baker. We are back. We had a couple weeks off. A little secret to share with the group. Our monetization was cut off for about 2 or 3 months because we inadvertently used like NFL footage that we weren't supposed to. Everybody else does that, but apparently we weren't allowed to. But we're finally back, so you'll see shows a little bit more frequency on our network. And of course, we're right in the thick of draft time. So the first show back after a couple weeks off is the 6 main draft questions facing these Vikings. Those Vikings have 4 picks this cycle. Most of this year's class was donated to the Jacksonville Jaguars for the draft pick that got Dallas Turner last year. But there's a lot of us who think the Vikings will trade back on draft night and start to accumulate some of those picks. You can count this guy in for that prediction. But yeah, we are only 2.5 weeks away. So let's get into these top 6, in my opinion, questions facing the Vikings on April 24th, 25th, and 26th. So we're going to start at the bottom of the list when we get up to number 1. That is the most important question facing the Vikings. Number 6 is, will they leave the draft with a WR3 prospect? This is kind of a prolonged Vikings talker, especially for this show. We always wonder if they're going to upgrade a WR3 and get somebody better than Chad Beebe, BC Johnson, KJ Osborne, Jalen Nailor. Now, this show is not anti-Jalen Nailor, even he scored 6 touchdowns last year. But he just wasn't very consistent, and I swear to God, you can find WR3s in this league that, don't just kind of disappear for periods of a season. And there is a possibility that the Vikings invest in a WR3 in this draft. Throughout this offseason, a lot of these long-standing nuisances or droughts, like, hey, they never get a defensive tackle. They always just sign Jonathan Bullard or Armin Watts or Shamar Stephen. Those have fell by the wayside because of defensive tackle. They have Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave now. Maybe they'll actually listen and get a WR3. I'm not necessarily talking about using the 24th pick on, Emeka Egbuka or Matthew Gold. I'm talking about if they start to trade back, maybe in round 3 or something, they're Jaden Higgins or Jalen Royals, Jalen Knoll, somebody is there. At least a prospect. Jack Beck would be a little further back in the draft. Josh Fry, who's on this show pretty frequently, said that would be a dude you can look for in middle rounds. But the long story is, are they ever going to get a third wide receiver that we're all really excited about? Because Jalen Nailor, his contract is up after this upcoming season. So now would be a decent point to invest a draft pick in some guy that you think, can move the needle there. So will they leave this draft the WR3, or is it same old, same old? Rondale Moore could even fill that role, although I think he's more of a WR4, the Brandon Powell role. Number 5, after wondering if they will draft a WR3, is, will they get a running back? I have admitted before, I think it was on this show, the night about, 3 weeks ago now, the night that Jordan Mason came to the Vikings via trade, my selfish knee-jerk reaction was, damn it, they're not going to draft a running back now. I was really excited that because this draft has 10 running backs that could reasonably start week 1, I thought the Vikings would get in on the trend and say, you know what, we're going to get Caleb Johnson. Or we like one of the Ohio State guys in Travion Henderson. With Jordan Mason in the house, it's probably unlikely that they use the first 2 rounds, 3 rounds on a running back, but they can still get a good one because this class is so damn deep. Of course, they don't have a whole lot of draft picks, but if we operate under the pretense that they can trade back, there are guys like DJ Giddens from Kansas State. Damian Martinez from Miami is intriguing. Ty Chandler is the only other guy, and Xavier Scott on the roster next to Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. So this is not an emergency need. But Aaron Jones is going to be 31 in December, and Jordan Mason is not old. But I still think you'd like a running back, a youthful one, in the pipeline. The Vikings even said last week, Kevin O'Connell said that the next step in his offense is to run the ball more. And they have said in past off seasons that we want to be more efficient at running the ball, but they've never said you're going to see a fundamental shift in how we do business. So it might be wise to get a mid-round running back just in the house in case injuries arise, or for next year when Aaron Jones maybe he's cut next offseason. We don't know. That Tuten, T-U-T-E-N guy from Virginia Tech, he is a physical freak. He should be available in round 4. So will they draft a running back? I sure hope so. Number 4, are there any veteran players acquired via trade? It'll be a little tricky because of the reduced draft capital, the number of picks. But if you follow Vikings football this offseason in the last month, the rumor mill is kind of hot and heavy. There's some who still think Sauce Gardner could be traded to the Vikings. That'd probably cost at least a first rounder and a second rounder, maybe 2 firsts. Tyreek Hill grew up a Vikings fan, and it seems like every day that passes, it's more likely that the Dolphins could trade him during this draft. Denzel Ward is, 27, 28 years old. He plays on the Browns. That's where Kwesi Adofo-Mensah came from. There's a chance the Vikings trade their first rounder for Ward and the Browns' third rounder. Kyle Pitts, probably an expendable asset, even though the Vikings don't need a tight end. Why not send 2 fifth-rounders to Atlanta for Kyle Pitts? So there are options on the trade market for an existing player, and it's probably unlikely that they trade for a veteran. But you can't rule out the possibility, especially in a shocking offseason when we've seen this team address all of their roster needs down the line systematically. So number 4 is, are there any veteran players that come onto this team via trade? Number 3, this one becomes more interesting, I think, as we get closer and closer to the draft, because if you search on Google right now, mock draft or Vikings mock draft, you scroll the hell down to number 24 to see who the Vikings got. I know you do that. A lot of them are starting to say safety. And we're talking Nick Emanwari from South Carolina, Malachi Starks from Georgia. I think what national draft heads do is they look at the Vikings roster and they say, ooh, Theo Jackson, I've never heard of that guy. Oh, the Vikings need a safety. Now, we don't necessarily think that way because we think Theo Jackson can ball. He just needs some snaps, some playing time. But I'm here to tell you, as mock drafters start sharpening their appetites, getting closer to this deadline of April 24th, at least every other mock draft you pull up from The Athletic or ESPN or Bleacher Report, it's saying a safety for the Vikings. So does Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, does he care that 3 years ago, his maiden voyage draft, he royally screwed up by trading away from number 12 when he could have easily drafted Kyle Hamilton and ended up getting Lewis Cine and Andrew Booth, who are barely in the NFL these days. It was a bad welcome to the NFL moment, a bad taste left in the mouth of all Vikings fans, especially in hindsight. But does it matter to him that he's already struck out on a safety, not a premium asset in round 1, when there are 2 really studly ones in Nick Emanwari and Malachi Starks? So the third question on the top 6 is, does it matter at all to Kwesi Adofo-Mensah that a safety did not work out for him last time? Because the best player available at number 24 or via trade down will probably be that safety from South Carolina or Malachi Starks from Georgia. I'd personally be content with Theo Jackson and Jay Ward backing him up. I don't know anything about Bubba Bolden. But if they really think that Nick Emanwari is a physical freak, then I won't hate it. I would rather them not draft a safety, mainly because I have beef with, we should have our safety in Lewis Cine right now, who is fully taking over because Cameron Bynum's no longer on this team. But the guy evidently wasn't good enough. So number 3 is, do they have the cojones to draft a safety in round 1 once again? Number 2 is, after myself, you with your friends and your neighbors and your coworkers talking about it, Vikings trading back. It seems like the most obvious thing you can imagine. My theory is the moment that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah traded the farm for Dallas Turner last year, he looked around at his pals and his staff and said, I can get those picks back. And that would happen, has to start with the 24th overall pick this year. And the mentality would be, oh, we're going to trade this one to the Bills for the 30th pick. And then you take that pick and you trade it to the Jets for the 35th pick. And you start to steamroll, spiral that thing into 6 draft picks altogether rather than 4, or 7 draft picks altogether. It seems like the most likely avenue because they have so few draft picks. Now the question becomes, do they actually do it? They could be chilling on draft night, number 24. Bada bing, Jahdae Barron from Texas slides into their lap at number 24, getting past the cornerback-needy Chargers, the cornerback-needy Packers. Would the Vikings really say no to Jahdae Barron? His draft stock has climbed all the way into the top 15. That's an example. Will they trade back no matter what, or will they stick and pick for the best player available? I think for my sake, I will be fine with whatever they do, obviously, but I think trading back makes the most sense because it's the easiest way to establish more youth in the pipeline at these positions of need. For example, you trade back from 24, hey, you're at pick 30. Nope, we're going to slide back to pick 37 or something like that. All of a sudden, you should have an additional second rounder, maybe a third rounder, and an additional fourth rounder. And if you trust your draft scouts, you trust yourself drafting Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, then that's just more throws at the dartboard. It's more spins of the wheel. So after probably a couple months now of Vikings fans thinking they're probably going to trade back, the second biggest question facing this team is, do they actually do it? And the number one question, kind of a no-brainer, is what is the foremost priority with their first draft pick? I would say pick number 24, but we don't know if they're going to stay there. But right now, well, let me set the table this way. Usually when you go into a Vikings draft, you know what they have to address. Last year, it was evident. It was either going to be Drake May or J.J. McCarthy. Maybe Michael Penix if shit went wonky. We were all right. They got J.J. McCarthy. I thought they'd get Drake May, but they got J.J. McCarthy. The year before that, it was kind of debate between wide receiver because Adam Thielen had just left and Deonte Banks, and cornerback like Deonte Banks. And we knew it was going to be kind of either or there at cornerback or wide receiver. 2022, we didn't know in general what Kwesi Adofo-Mensah would do because he was so new. In 2021, if they weren't going to draft Justin Fields, we absolutely knew in our bones that offensive tackle was the priority. They got Christian Darrisaw. So that's a long way of 2020. Stephon Diggs had just been traded. We knew they needed a wide receiver. That is a long way of saying usually you can predict the first round of a Vikings draft. This time you cannot. They could take Gray Zabel, number 24, and I'd be like, I get it. Sweet. Let's roll, baby. They could draft Kenneth Grant, probably my favorite prospect in this draft if they stick and pick and Jahdae Barron isn't there. I'd be like, defensive tackle, let's get deep. Let's get deep at that spot. They could take Omarion Hampton, a running back, and I'd be like, oh, shit, I know what they're doing. They really want to run the ball, so they're getting all of these running backs. There's so much mystery at this spot. It makes the most important question, what is the foremost priority? Are they going to continue to build the trenches like they have for the past month? Are they going to get rich on offense and draft Luther Burden or Colston Loveland, a tight end, J.J. McCarthy's teammate? We don't know the foremost priority because the roster is in pretty good shape. So I think that is the most burning question. It's basically a vanilla way of saying who's the pick going to be, but we usually can narrow it down to like two things. Or last year was so simple they were going to draft a quarterback. Can't do that this year. They could draft a cornerback, defensive tackle, safety, running back, offensive guard, and none of us would be too surprised. So the top question is, what is their priority when they get up to the podium at number 24 or when they trade back and ultimately get up into the podium at 30-something? All right, that's all I got. I'm working on some of our sweet guests that you guys and gals have liked in the past. Thor Nystrom, I'm hoping, will join us in the next 2 weeks. Paul Allen will join us. I just got to work on the day and time. That's all we got for Sunday, April 6th. Skol, baby.